chicken, duck. You win, and the timer has stopped, so that. Welcome back to Arcade. I am Super Tommy, and this is a series on creating a memory match game like you may have seen in Mario Party, where instead of just flipping cards over and getting matches, we have a character. Let's just refresh this. We have a character that runs around. Of course, in Mario Party, it is Mario or Luigi or Peach or whoever your character is, Toad, running around and then selecting different boxes to see if you get a match, just like the basic memory game. So we've covered making most of the game so far. In the last video, we went over creating a match or checking for all boxes being matched. And then when that happens, the level is over. And we looked at what happens when you select the bear, which then stops you from moving for about 1 second before the bear goes away, just like the memory match game in Mario Party for the Nintendo 64. Now, the last thing we're going to cover in this YouTube series is the timer. So in memory match in Mario Party, there's about 45 seconds for you to pick all of the, get all the matches right. So we're going to put a timer basically right up here, count down from 45 seconds. And when that has happened, you will lose the level. So we're going to do it in a new class. So instead of adding more stuff to our game scene, which is getting kind of long, I think we're at about 350 lines, not terrible, but different ways you can organize code makes it easier to read later, and you keep similar things together. So when you're looking for where is this thing happening, you're not going through like 10 different files. I mean, this project is too small for having 10 different files, but in different projects that may happen. So here, let's just do a countdown controller. So countdown controller.js, we're going to just put it in the scenes folder. In this example, you may want to put it in a different folder in your actual project. It'll just be a plain JavaScript class, export default class countdown controller. So what we are going to do is use Phaser's clocks. That's on this.time when you're in the scene. And so we're going to want the scene, and we're going to want the text that we're going to update, and that's going to show what the time is. So in our constructor, we're going to want a scene, and we're going to want, we'll call this the label. That's the text object. Let's add some types here, phaser.scene, and then phaser.gameObjects.text. Okay. And let's just put these into class properties, type, phaser.scene, and then label is going to be, like we've already written here, phaser.gameObjects.text, label. Okay, so now we're going to do this.scene, scene, this.label, label. Now we're going to have a start. So what start is going to do, and let's say start gives us a duration, so how long our countdown should go for, and let's just say that's it. And by default, it'll be 45 seconds, which is 45,000 milliseconds. And then this .scene .time let's say add event. Is that right? Let's see. If I do add event and then delay. Yes, okay. I'm going to do delay. That is the duration. That's probably all I need to know. And then here I want to save the timer event that's going to be returned by add event. Right, returns a phaser.time.timer event. So I'm going to call this timer event type phaser.time.timer event. So this .timer event, now if for some reason you call start 2 times, we are going to, if there is already a timer event, this .timer event, I'm going to destroy it, stop the previous timer event, set it undefined. I guess you may not actually need to do this. We'll just do it anyway. And then if there is one running, I'm going to stop it, and then we're going to create a new one. So there's our timer event. it's going to start, and we're going to want an update. So this update will not be automatically called. We need to call it in our scene. And what we're going to do is get the elapsed time from the timer event dot get elapsed. That will be in milliseconds. Now, if there is no timer event, as in we didn't call start, then do nothing because we have nothing to show you. So that's get elapsed. So that elapsed would be, if you're going to 45 seconds, it would be 0, 1, 10 seconds, 20 seconds, that's counting up. We want it to count down because we're doing a countdown. So what do we call this? Let's call this remaining. So we know in duration, we gotta say this duration actually. Let's make a new one, duration. Call it total time, perhaps, if you prefer. No, let's call it duration 0. If not timer event, I guess, or this dot duration is less than or equal to 0. If there's no duration, there's nothing to show either, I think. We'll just see. If there's that duration minus elapsed, that's the amount of time remaining in milliseconds. And then we're going to want to show, let's see, we don't want to show, we want to show it in seconds. We're going to divide it by 1,000. Let's see. Let's just see what we get if we do that. So we have the label dot text dot texture dot text, and we're going to want to show remaining divided by 1,000, but that will be too much, and we're going to only want to show up to 2. Let's just call this, let's call this text. No. Let's call this seconds. Right, so divide, okay, seconds. So seconds dot to fixed, right? That should only show us up to 2 decimal places on whatever, so we don't actually, just do this. Yeah, okay. So that's that. That should work. So we have, there's countdown controller. Now we do want it to stop, start, stop. And in stop, what we're going to do is basically this. So this dot stop, if one has already started, do that. That's good. So we want to call back those to tell whoever is starting this countdown that it has stopped or that it has counted down to 0. So let's actually drop a callback here. So number and then callback will just very simply be any function, takes no parameters, returns void. Callback, and we're going to save that. Just call this timer callback. Type void. Timer callback would not be the best name. Okay. Finished callback. Let's call it finished callback. This dot stop, this dot finished callback, callback. That's good. So when it is done, fixed, and so if seconds less than or equal to 0, oh no, I need to do this. Right, so what happens is, right, we can use this, right? Callback. So our add event, the timer event we're making, will actually do the callback for us, and what we're going to want to do is basically this dot stop, just delete our timer event, and then we're going to do this dot finish callback. So I guess given that we stored it in here, we don't really need to do that. So we'll just do a check. So you may want to actually store it. We don't need to do this right now, I don't think. If we do, we'll do it again. But if you wanted to pass in a class method in this callback, then you would have to store your callback in the class property to reference it in a method later. But this seems like it works fine. We'll just see how it goes. So let's go to game and add a countdown to our game here. We're going to put it more or less on top of everything. So let's just do it here. So const timer label, this dot add dot text, and we're going to put it at width times half, and then let's just say 50 from the Y, and the text will just say 45, and then font size we will also just say 48, and then set origin, we're going to want this at the middle, 0.5, 0.5, and then let's do a countdown controller. We will need a class property because we need to call update on our countdown controller. So let's just call this countdown, and it'll be of type countdown controller. So VS Code auto imported that for me. Timer label this dot countdown new countdown controller. So we want to give it the scene and this timer label that we just made. Good. And then this dot countdown dot start, which we have to give it, I guess, 45. No, I guess the way I did this is not actually sensical, since this, let's just say that this could be null, right? So in which case, well, let's flip them. Let's actually say that that can't be null. So that is non-optional. We're going to delete this optional brackets here. Always give me a callback. We'll check this just for safety. Okay, so we're going to do 45 seconds as the default. So on start, when the countdown is finished, let's just go this dot create boxes handle countdown finished. Handle countdown finished. We'll do this dot handle countdown finished, and we're going to bind it to this. So whenever this callback is called, the context will always be this. Let me see, you got 45 there. Good. It's going to start. When it's finished, this is when the game will be over. And before we do that, let's just call update on our countdown here. Let's just do it after everyone. Countdown.update. Okay, matches count, countdown, that's being called, start is being called. Let's see, countdown finished. Now, countdown controller start was called, so theoretically it should be called, but it does not look like it is, right? Is it the way? Callback, update, oh, yes, okay. So we need to store our duration. This dot duration is duration. Now let's see. So that, because we had it, and there's it counting down. So from 45 seconds down to 0, and it's going to go, let's not wait 45 seconds. Let's say this will be called, and what we're going to do when this has finished, but we want the counter to stop if we already want. So in our check match, we know when the player has already won. Check match. Here matches count plus plus. If greater than 4, game won. Now the only thing is there's delayed call here. I guess that's okay. So this dot countdown dot stop. So there is a possibility the player picks the last and say stop. Player picks the box with some time left, but it doesn't animate all the way until the thing turns blue, and they'll still lose. So that's something that's going to be up to you, whether that's okay or not. But let's go back to here. We do know that when that is the case, text should be 0 when this, so that we don't see that 0.02. It's like a fraction of a second. Okay, let's see. So there's that game. If the game wins, we're going to stop this counter. Otherwise, we are going to come up here to handle countdown finish, and we're going to go this.player.active false. So we're going to disallow the player from moving, and then we're going to do this.add.text, basically much like we did previously for the game for the you win text. And I also want height. And then we can just do this, height times 0 half, and then you lose that, font size 48 as well. Let's see if we can get a win here. Parrot, I think the parrot's in this top corner. This guy, chicken, is it here? That's duck, chicken, duck. You win, and the timer has stopped, so that is working as expected. Now let's test it not working, so we're not going to wait 45 seconds because that would just be too long. So let's come up here. So here we pass in the seconds duration, so let's just say 5 seconds. Like there's no way you can win in 5 seconds. You lose. Okay, yes. So let's last thing here is going to be player active, this.player.set velocity 0. Now we may also just want to see it lose. We may also want to make sure that the player can't. Let's fix that. We can set the origin .set origin 0.5. We can also make sure that the player, this.player.set collide world bounds is true, and I'd like to actually order this so that you lose is in a better place, and organize this with the player so that we don't have this guy moving out of the world bounds. And lose. Okay, so that is the basics of memory match. Now there's a few other things that we're not going to cover in this YouTube series, but if you would like to know how to do, check out the description below for a link to where you can learn that. We're going to look at using a gamepad for this game because that seems cool, and it's from Mario Party. So gamepad, a preload animation screen says you are loading, at least in this example, this somewhat large-ish texture and a couple of other smaller PNGs. Add a little preload animation to it so that we can add some more polish. Talk about fonts, including bitmap fonts, because you may want some bitmap fonts in your game. There is, open source Mario Party fonts if you wanted to make your text more like the Nintendo 64 game. And then it's just, of course, music and sound effects that we can add to this game as well. Fade ins, fade outs, different sound effects for selecting the boxes. And then, general code cleanup that we can do that we briefly talked about to separate the code, to organize the code in a different way. So if you want information about those extras, do check out the description below. We'll include a link for you to learn more about that. Thanks for watching this series, and we hope you've enjoyed making Memory Match.